that the stock market is not the same thing as the economy and never was, and you shouldn't read one off of the other. They have their own sets of determinants that are not identical. It is possible for the market to go up and the economy to be in trouble, and it's possible for the economy to be in good shape and the market is in trouble. So keep that in mind. That's an important caveat because the short-circuiting of that difference is common in the media. They will infer one from the other. You'll see presidential races in which one side says the economy is good. Why? Because the market is going up. And the other side said the economy is terrible and that the market going up doesn't change that. That's an awareness that they're different, but it's being used in a crude way. I want to make the case that you should keep it in mind because it is really the truth of this situation. Okay. I'm going to mention three things quickly that I think contributed to the remarkable breakdown of the market on Monday and Tuesday of this week. It's not yet clear where that's all going. It's bouncing around. But the drop on Monday was unmistakable, 1,000 points on the measurement. And so the first thing is to remind everyone that capitalism is a system of cycles. That's the politest word we have for this phenomenon. Here are some other words: bust, crash, crisis, recession, depression. I could go on. Every 4 to 7 years, according to the National Bureau of Economic Research, a well-respected agency of the U.S. government, on average, Michael doesn't agree, between 4 and 7, on average, every 4 to 7 years, capitalism, wherever it is, has a downturn. Some of them are short and shallow. Others of them are long and deep. The Great Depression of the 30s, long and deep. The collapse in 2020, very deep, short. The one in 2008 and 9, deep and short. Medium length in terms of how bad it can get. So if you're using this 4 to 7 year average, and if the last one we had was in the year 2020, the so-called COVID breakdown, well, it's 5 years. So it's pretty much on schedule. We are, to make a long story short, we're kind of due for another one. Nobody should be surprised. And if you read the financial press, there are plenty of people who have done this little arithmetic, and they know we kind of, we could be due for another one. Number two, we have a very volatile administration. I mean, on again, off again trade war, on again, off again tariffs. The latest one this morning, a 200% tariff on European wine, I believe it was. You know, this is a politician who has discovered that thanks to the Congress, the tariff is something he can do. He can be a cowboy with the tariff because he can declare them without having to go through any sort of procedure with any other branch of government. He just has the power to do it. I read the headline 200%.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
European wine, and I can
you think of wine, not that.
Yes. I don't drink that.
In response, by the way, in response to 50% tariff on whiskey coming from the United States.
That's bourbon. Everybody, the Chinese, everybody is tariffing bourbon in order to impact that part of the country which is concerned with bourbon production. Anyway, here's the point. The uncertainty, and there's a story in today's Wall Street Journal that the Business Roundtable has been having meetings with Trump. And the lesson of all of it is clear. This level of on again, off again produces what economists call uncertainty, which is always a problem in economics. And now it is an exaggerated uncertainty because of literally 2 months of on again, off again. No business in their right mind would move production from China to Ohio or from Mexico to New York based on this craziness, because to move a production facility is very expensive and takes a lot of time. In short, it entails risk, And that risk would become crazy if you undertook the expense only to have a president like this undo the tariff a month or a week or a year after you have undertaken this expense. Bottom line, one of the reasons we may have a recession, like one of the reasons for last Monday's collapse, is that people are calculating that the logical thing most big businesses will do in this situation is hesitate, not invest, postpone a planned investment. And as we have learned ever since Keynes forced us to see it, a capitalist economy is always held hostage by the investors. If they invest, well, then the circular flow of the economy works and we keep our jobs. If they decide to hold back, which their free enterprise allows them to do, then we all suffer the consequences that they're not investing the money, that the money is sitting there waiting. Mr. Trump maybe never will have that explained to him, but he is increasing the uncertainty, therefore the risk, therefore the hesitancy, and therefore the arrival of the next recession we're due for at any moment. And what you saw on Monday was crystal clear, an exemplar of that. Why? Because the night before, on a Fox interview, the interviewer had asked Trump directly, some words like, can you rule out a recession this year? And he fudged. He didn't give a clear answer. Clearly did not want to go and say, oh, don't worry, it'll be taken care of. He couldn't even give that. If you put that together with what happened earlier last week, and I believe we mentioned it last time in our conversation, earlier last week, the Atlanta Federal Reserve Bank issued its prediction for 2025. They said a recession is coming. They predicted a decline of the GDP, I believe in the neighborhood of 2%, which would be not just a recession, but a bad one. Wow. So now there's in the air all of this, add the uncertainty, and you've got all the conditions. And then finally, I want to stick in here. I know I'm special pleading here, but I do believe that we are living in the decline of an empire, and that it is the background music. No, it doesn't explain the stock market on Tuesday or Monday. No, it doesn't. But it is there is the gnawing, worrisome backdrop in the minds of Jamie Dimon or anybody else in Wall Street that maybe we really are. Maybe what a few folks are saying. I'll pick one in their world, Ray Dalio, very important investor, Bridgewater, one of the biggest hedge funds in the world. He's telling people, that's what I see, that's what I see. Even if you don't believe him, it's in the air. You put those things together and you can have a panic day on Wall Street like last Monday, and you better pay attention because typically the crash doesn't all happen at once. It shows you, it smells already in advance, and that's what I think Monday represents. What I think would be worth our talking about, both today and perhaps in a future show, would be one key point that you made. I think we need to examine why it is that you, Michael, have the judgment that the war in Ukraine is linked to the notion that all of Europe is at peril from Russia, which in turn is linked to an attempt to revive European capitalism, which looks pretty sorry as it crumbles between the U.S. on the one hand and the China BRICS on the other, that they're going to rescue all of that by a massive debt-funded defense buildup. I think exploring that would not only be useful, obviously, to our European audience, which I'm sure Nima knows is considerable, but also to the rest of the world, because even though Europe isn't the colonial master of everything in the world that it once pretended to be, it's still an important block in the world economy. The U.S., the Chinese, and then the Europeans, at least until others arrive. I think that would be very, very important because the effort led by Merz in Germany will be picked up by Starmer and Macron and the others because they're in the same kind of boat and they are going to have to stimulate and they're going to have to come up with the government. They're going to have to come up with a rationale for doing that. And given the weakness of the left, it's more likely than not that they will do the Merz. Although in France, once Macron is out of there, it could go in a quite different direction. Let me go at this in another way. If you keep performing the way Mr. Trump is, with the on again, off again, forget whether it gets worse and worse in terms of the higher and higher tariffs. Even the uncertainty of whatever the level is, on and off and on and off, you are teaching the world a lesson in addition to what we've been talking about in terms of a declining empire. If the G7 now accounts for 28% of total output in the world, but the Chinese and BRICS together account for 35% of the total output of the world, which are roughly what the numbers are, then you are training the world into re-evaluating each country's situation. Who are we borrowing from? Who are we selling to? Who are we buying from? Because the very uncertainty of Mr. Trump's behavior, on top of the shifting global wealth allocation, means that countries need to do, to make a long story short, more business with China and the BRICS and less business with the G7, because anything else is stupid. Anything else puts you at a level of risk you have no. So you would rather be selling to the rising BRICS configuration. So Canada produces electricity. Who needs electricity? China and the BRICS. They're desperate for electricity. Sell it to them, which they can do. If you have steel and aluminum that the Americans are an uncertain market for, shift. And Michael is right that you don't shift everything all at once. That's too expensive. That's too risky. But if everybody shifts 5%, 10% of their business from one of these areas to the other, the impact accumulated on the United States will be devastating. But that's in the cards anyway. Take away Trump. It's been going on before Trump. It will continue after Trump. It is subject to forces he cannot control. And the effort to control what you cannot is often reflected in the kind of herky-jerky that you're seeing, because he set himself an impossible task. It's a little bit like Michael saying, you can't have a 2-month policy to achieve a 5-year program. This makes you crazy because you'll be so disappointed at what you get after 2 months that you, instead of reevaluating, you can't do it, you'll try some other policy, hoping it will do in 2 months. But that's not your problem, the right policy. Your problem is you don't understand, and we live in a country that, we've talked about this now many times, whose reaction to the declining empire, to the rise of the BRICS, is a combination of denial about what's going on, and then the fantastic imagination that if you send the 7th Fleet to the South China Sea and you make a lot of noise about Taiwan, you're going to slow or stop this process. You're not. It hasn't worked for 20 years. There's no reason to believe it's going to work now. You can pivot to Asia all you want. It's not a plan.